Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of the Full Spectrum TTRPG podcast. My name is Trey.
I am Rungren.
And we've got some stuff to talk about tonight. Tonight we're talking SCP stuff again.
Yeah, because I'm a lazy bum.
Well, I really appreciate personally, and I'm not just trying to gas you up here, but I really appreciate personally that you're not willing to cover something if you don't feel like you could do it justice. You know what I mean? Like if you just sat up here and spouted ChatGPT written stuff about it,
Yeah.
I might not know any better. Probably wouldn't.
I don't. Yeah, no, I got to double check all that.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm not ready for that. I feel. Yeah, no, I don't. Moving on. We're doing SCP tonight, sir.
Yeah. So, chat, I've got two short ones for you, and then we're going to start an Ouroboros cycle. I told you last time that we covered it that I was almost done writing it. I thought I was. I really did. The final part of the Ouroboros cycle, part 4, is actually 14 parts. So, I have 3 parts done and a good chunk of part 4 done. We're going to cover at least part 1, but probably part 2 as well tonight. But we're going to cover 2 smaller ones first. And I'm really excited for these. I like all the ones we're covering tonight. And I really like the Ouroboros cycle. All of these are just dips into them. If you want to get the whole story, you should look up the whole thing. You can read it all for free on the website.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of YouTube videos that break down the whole thing. The Exploring series has a series where he talks about everything that happens in there. His Ouroboros video is like 6.5 hours long. So hopefully you enjoy these.
And we're not going to be selling a plushie.
No. So the first one that I have for you tonight is SCP-001. Because we're still in the 001
Wait, no.
proposals. And it's called God's Blind Spot.
Okay.
And this is from Spike Brennan. And the classification is Yesod. It's a special classification.
I don't know.
There's at least 15 more. There's another one that's been added since we started doing this.
All right.
So
You
there's
just got 2. You found 2 short ones for us tonight?
yeah, 2 short ones, and then we're going to start into
Okay.
Ouroboros after
right.
that. So there's quite a few more still to go. But so SCP-001 is known as Facility T.
Felicity?
Facility T.
Oh, okay.
65,000 cubic meters in the Sinai.
Okay, so it's in the Middle East.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm going to butcher this. I'm going to try really hard, but I'm going to butcher this. The French Commission des Sciences de l'Arts. I am not French. I'm German.
You don't say.
The French Commission
don't
des
say.
Sciences de l'Art indicated that at one point there
Can I
was
see
a
that
stone...
for just a second,
Yes,
sir?
please. See if you can pronounce it better for me.
No, I don't. It's not the pronunciation.
It's the Commission of Sciences for the Arts, I believe, but
You said this was written big.
yeah, it's written as big as it could fit without being a billion
I can't
pages.
see. I don't even know where it's at, Trey.
It's right
I have my glasses on.
there, underneath Facility T.
Facility T.
I'm gonna take a drink while you do that.
Okay. Still, let me put
That's exactly what it is. Awesome.
What?
Dark says that's exactly
Exactly
what
what
it is.
it is. That's exactly how you pronounce it. God, I'm old. Back in the day, you know, I had a flannel tied around my waist.
Yeah.
That was the style at the time.
Read me the Princess Diaries, Grandpa.
Oh my gosh. So Commissioner Science, I think Science and Arts.
Okay.
The Commission. What's that? All the Science and Arts. I'm wondering.
The French Commission for Science and Arts, or Science and Arts, or of Science, or whichever.
Well,
version it is.
I just wondered if that's like a real thing.
I think it is.
And if I go look at it later, I kind of need some clue.
Right, I understand.
Sorry.
Indicated that at one point there was a stone structure dating back to the 2nd millennium BCE, and that it fit the description of an inn, though due to the construction of Facility T, no trace of the original building remains. Facility T is anomalous in that it has no Akiva radiation, and that any Akiva radiation brought into Facility T ceases to produce Akiva radiation. but resumes when it's removed from Facility T. Akiva radiation is believed to be a result of both faith, or of faith, and is known to appear in places of congregated faith, no matter which faith the believers follow. Akiva radiation has no recorded side effects on humans, but can be harnessed as a weapon to repel anomalous entities that are demonic or devilish in nature. Akiva radiation comes up a lot in various SCPs, and it is something that is weaponized faith quite literally. They were able to take the Akiva radiation that faith produces and put it in a gun. So
that's the most American thing I've ever heard in my life.
Yep.
Hold on there.
You got something from Dark there on the commission?
Yeah, give me just a second.
Yeah.
All right. Commission of the Science and Arts, a French Scientific and Artistic Institute established on the 16th of March in 1798.
Okay.
167 members. And all but 16 joined Napoleon Bonaparte's campaign in Egypt. And produced a description. That's where he shot the nose off the Sphinx.
So it was not an accident that they used that then. That's important. That's going to come up again in a little bit.
Thank you.
So
very much.
Akiva radiation is belief, right?
Okay.
It is a tangible thing that can be recorded. Remember, for anybody that's joining us for the first time, these SCP-001 proposals are each their own universe.
Right.
In this one, faith is something that can be calculated. That's used in a lot of SCPs, as I mentioned a minute ago, but not all of them have that. But it's something that, like Site-19, that has SCP-343, which is God, in it. That site harnesses and is run by Akiva radiation. Because anybody that comes into contact with SCP-343 believes they've talked to God, and so their belief skyrockets, and so it powers the entire facility.
More powerful, yeah. I gotcha.
Facility T is also anomalous in that when inside, human beings cannot die normally.
Okay.
There were some tests that were run.
I'm just saying there's lots of ways that humans could die normally.
Yeah, we're going to get into that. D-Class Personnel 1082, a healthy human, male, is placed in a standard human containment cell within SCP-001 and observed for 120 days. No changes. Personnel, this third test, this is test number 3. Personnel D-Class 2326, healthy human female, is placed in an airtight vessel within SCP-001. A lethal dose of cyanide gas is released into the vessel. After completion of the test, the gas is vented. D-Class 2326 suffered no adverse medical effects.
Yeah,
that's very true.
Many. We have talked about a few now that you mentioned. Yes.
Too much faith? I don't think faith is here yet. Test number 6. Notice that we don't get disclosed some of the other tests that are run.
Oh, yeah.
Test number 6, same parameters as test number 3, but subject to 30 healthy specimens of Rattus norvegicus, which is the Norwegian rat.
Okay.
Specimens die of cyanide poisoning. Subsequent variations of this test suggest that the life-preserving attributes of SCP-001 are limited to human subjects.
Okay.
So they tried this with a few other things as well. A woman that's got stage 4 cancer. It's metastasized to most of her organs. I can't say that word no matter how hard I try. She's going to die within hours, probably. She's brought into SCP-001, and there's no change. She is absolutely fine. They brought her out to see what would happen, and she died within 48 hours. So, you know. However, there was an attempt to test some other things. They tried to cut a man up with a chainsaw. And science! Despite the fact that he wasn't allowed to die, he was allowed to have his body parts separated. That happened.
Yeah.
However, they did, if you put them back together, they did heal back up and connect again. So that was nice. What didn't work was lava. People died from lava.
Look, all I'm saying is whoever wrote this, you need to stop watching the Unit 731 documentaries just for a little bit.
Yep, just for a little while.
Bit. Get away. It's important. But
in this universe, Facility T houses the Foundation's O5 Council, which for anybody that might not remember, the O5 Council are the ones in charge.
Right.
Yes, RE4 style. Chainsaw, knife parry. There you go. Currently, 9 of the O5 Council are within, as well as other members of senior management and the ethics committee.
I don't. Which results of one cockatiel in a cage.
Yep.
Much like our government. Thank you.
They're right. There are a couple of really fun things in here. A couple archival notes from when it was first found. This is archival document 06-S71NF-23-A excerpt. In matters of natural philosophy and of understanding the substance of the Almighty God, we must begin our investigation with the evidence of our senses, which includes the testimony of Holy Scripture. For no man has seen God, but the perception of God may come from observing his creation and from the careful study of Holy Scripture. Consider Exodus 4, which being rendered in the Hebrew, and they give the entirety of the Hebrew text there, which being interpreted says, "And it came to pass by the way in the end that the Lord met him," meaning Moses, "and sought to kill him. Then Zipporah, the wife of Moses, took a sharp stone and cut off the foreskin of her son and cast it at his feet and said, Surely a bloody husband art thou to me."
I have no idea, dog. I have no
that's
idea.
Weird. That's really weird.
That is strange.
Plastic straws. Consider the teaching of these verses. Many learned scholars focus their attention on the second of these verses, in which Zipporah, the wife of Moses, performs the rite of circumcision, and in so doing saves her husband from the wrath of the Almighty God. Therein, say the scholars, lies the moral lesson, that none, not even God's prophet, shall be exempt from the laws of his covenant. But consider the first of these verses, which is so little understood. The Almighty God, having formed an intent to kill Moses, attempted to do so and failed. This episode is the key to the understanding of the substance of God, for we must understand that if Scripture is infallible, and Scripture tells us that the Almighty God tried to kill Moses but failed, then infallible Scripture saying that God is not omnipotent, or at least that God's power does not extend to that particular place. And so, so that is the trick here, which is that in this universe, this is the place God can't touch. This is God's blind spot.
Gotcha.
That when he was creating everything, he put his finger down to make it, and this is the one spot that was below his fingertip. So,
I don't know. I don't know. There's a couple of stories in the Bible that deal with that. They're kind of weird.
Yep.
One involves a lot of backstab. It's just, look, I realize the other guys are supposed to be the bad guy in the story. They did do something horrible. But anyway.
Yeah.
I'm not sure why. You don't see that. I do know that you're not getting that back. So if that's happened to you, it's easy to figure out that that's happened to you.
It's very true.
So I don't know.
Which do you think is worse, the loss of the foreskin or the loss of your 2 big toes? Because that's what Nebuchadnezzar did to his enemies.
Well, usually, as I understand by scriptural law, when they take the foreskin, you're going to forget about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. For sure.
The big toes, they're not very attractive, but they kind of help.
Yeah, they're pretty important. There's a couple other really interesting additions in here from other excerpts. One of them is about the thermometric apparatus permitted by the Order of the Templars in their attempt to understand why this was a place where people couldn't die. They call it the divine grace, that it was a thaumaturgic force, that it was a force of the universe itself that held it back and made it special. And that's what they eventually decided to call Akiva radiation.
Okay.
And then Site Director William Wynne Westcott to Helena Blavatsky says, having studied at the end and testing its properties, only one conclusion can be reached. God is a blind spot, and we have found where it is. The properties of the end present a number of thermometric engineering opportunities beyond merely hiding from the angel of death. We now know that the ambient Akiva radiation level within the end remains at 0, regardless of what happens inside. By implication, since this is God's blind spot, there can be no theological consequences to an action taken within its boundaries. Although I am no physicist, our colleague Nicola has described it to me as being essentially a Faraday cage for sin. The suitability of such a location as the headquarters of the central decision-making body of our new order should be obvious.
So I did not expect to hear the phrase "a Faraday cage for sin" anytime. That's hilarious.
So in
Rather
this
awesome.
universe, the Templars became the Foundation,
Yes.
and they set up their headquarters here because surely God won't judge them for anything they do in a place he can't see.
Yeah. Yeah. About right.
There's a couple other last few notes that I have here before we move on.
All right.
One of these is from Dr. Marvin Scranton.
Okay.
You might remember Scranton is the one who made the Scranton anchors, the reality anchors. He says, as a result of our study of the properties of SCP-001, we are now ready to begin our first trials here at Site-36 for the artificial generation of a shielded Akiva vacuum, which we're calling the Antimonad. Essentially, we're going to create another instance of SCP-001. Today's test will be the culmination of over 20 years of advances in thaumametric engineering and applied theology. Bertrand, my assistant, puts it more bluntly. We've built a box and we're pushing God out of it. Then there's a slight delay as they test it, right? It turns out that just as nature abhors a vacuum, so does imminence. Our instrument readings indicate that when the Antimonad came online, the measurable Akiva radiation within the test capsule dropped to 0. The Hume level spiked. We think that something else, something that we don't presently have a way of observing or measuring, came in. We don't know what it was or where it went.
Okay. I got a couple more?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. If I can,
Please
start
do.
right here. I don't know who wrote this. There's a couple of clever things right there.
Yeah.
But they were. There's a one. If I understood, his colleague named Bertrand was the one that had the phrase about the box and pushing God out.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to, whoever the author of this is, clever.
Yeah.
All right, that was cool. I did catch the other one, the Nicola. Earlier, but that's kind of funny. Okay.
So having made their box and attempting to push God out of it, and then something else was in there instead, the O5 Council had a rush meeting. Gentlemen, the frequency and severity of anomalous incidents appears to have dramatically increased since the 31st of July incident at Site-36. As we have discussed, this episode underscores the need for a Foundation to revisit and expand its mission charter. To date, we have been a research organization, but emergency times call for emergency measures, and it has become imperative for our organization to do more than contain the specimens that we study. We must take steps to secure those anomalies not already within the Foundation's custody, both in order to protect the anomalies for further research and to protect humanity as a whole. So the SCP Foundation starts as an attempt to fix the problem they made.
That they made. Okay.
Yeah.
How convenient. Well, yeah, I am too. Sorry, I'm terrible at it.
Me too.
So it's just it is what it is, I guess. I don't know. Do better. I don't know what to tell you, man.
There is a really spooky thing that happens in here. Let's add.
Finally, we got hollered at for ad times. I don't know what Nightbot's thinking.
Yeah, there ain't no telling what Nightbot's thinking. Which is that after their meeting, the next thing we see is this. A memorandum to the administrator of the O5 Council, copied from the Office of Tactical Theology. Which is, I love that, by the way.
It's so stupid.
It's wonderful. Status of negotiations on Project Uriel. I believe that we have reached an understanding with the counterparty. The purpose of this memorandum is to memorialize the principal points of understanding. As we have discussed, the formal agreement will be presented in the form of a covenant. The Foundation's operations at Facility T have for some time been a sticky point vis-a-vis our relation with the counterparty. Recent developments, too, voluminous to be summarized here, have prompted the Foundation's senior management to seek a reapproachment with the counterparty, both to facilitate, that's how words work, ongoing research and containment efforts to avoid accelerating a theo-eschatological catastrophe and to maintain the efficiency of certain Foundation protocols such as the containment regimen for SCP-1844. That was the Four Horsemen, if you might remember.
Right.
At senior management's direction, then, my office undertook negotiations with the counterparty. The points summarized below represent the outcome of these negotiations. And if you don't yet know who the counterparty is, you will over the course of these points. No natural person may... This is point 1. No natural person may physically remain within Facility T for a continuous period in excess of 120 years. This limit applies to members of the O5 Council, other members of the Foundation management and staff, test subjects, and others. The Foundation is expected to enforce this limitation. 2. Minutes of the proceedings of the Ethics Committee are to be communicated to the counterparty not less frequently than annually. 3. The counterparty shall not smite, strike down, or otherwise exact wrath upon any of the Foundation personnel named on Exhibit A, as amended from time to time by the mutual agreement of the parties, without at least 90 days written notice and an opportunity to cure the transgression, provided, however, that this clause shall not be applicable in the case of a tribulation of general applicability.
Okay.
Number 4. Neither the Foundation nor any of its executive level personnel shall bow down to or worship any divine entity other than the counterparty. For I, the Lord, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children unto the 3rd and 4th generations of them that hate me. And number 5, the Foundation and the counterparty shall use commercially reasonable efforts to cooperate with and respect to the containment of the adverse entities described on Exhibit B, collectively the Angra Mainyu. Please contact me to discuss the points of understanding before the formal agreement is completed. Respectfully, Sheldon Katz, Prophet of God. God got mad. Yep.
That's hilarious. Like, that is... I can't think of another word to use. That is so dumb.
Yep.
It was very entertaining. I kind of like that one. That was funny.
I really like they shall not be struck down within 90 days.
Oh, everything. There was so much. No longer.
Yeah, the 120 years.
120 years. Probably quite a few.
I'm sure.
If we really want to break it down, we can probably take many different angles.
Yeah.
At it.
My favorite part about this is because Akiva radiation is proven to come from any belief. Mm-hmm. That means that the other gods are just like, why's he got an agreement with them? Yeah, that's the implicit controversy of it, right?
Yeah.
That he knows it's there, but it's supposed to be a spot he can't see or know about.
Right.
So, yeah.
No, I think that was actually one of the ones I enjoyed the most, actually, because it was silly.
It's fun.
I don't know. It was like an airplane movie. I liked it.
I skipped past because it's a big section and I'm trying to keep it short for time. But I skipped past the entire section where Napoleon Bonaparte tried to take the end for himself. Oh, yeah. Which is why I chuckled earlier when you brought up Bonaparte.
Yeah, fair enough.
You know.
Well, I'm sorry. I don't know who the author is behind that. On that. But kudos to them because they are not a dimwit. Spike
Brennan.
Thank you, Spike Brennan. That was an excellent story.
You ready for the next one?
Sure. I don't know how. Look, I love sly references, and that was full of them.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Nothing else is going to be able to compare tonight, unfortunately.
Yeah. They've got another one. I don't know. Anyway.
So this is SCP-001. It is by WJS, and this is normalcy, also sometimes called consensus reality. SCP-001 is the document describing consensus reality. Anomalous activity is therefore defined as any activity that occurs outside the parameters of this document. The document may describe certain characteristics of reality as inherently anomalous, as decided upon by the O5 Council. Any additions, deletions, or updates to SCP-001 require the consensus decision of the O5 Council. Access to SCP-001 is limited to the O5 Council. Access by other Foundation members or non-Foundation entities constitutes a containment breach that may result in a broken masquerade scenario. Now, broken masquerade is one that comes up a lot. It's used in a lot of SCPs. That's a scenario where everyone is given amnestics to make them become who they were before they worked for the Foundation.
Okay.
It's basically to trigger a code word that makes their brain wipe everything they've learned since they became a member of the Foundation. General amnestic release is authorized to be used in the case of a containment breach up to and including global Class A amnesticization as required. So, What we have from here are letters, conversations from the O5 Council to each other about what is and isn't anomalous. This one is January 11th, 1932. Declaration of modern witchcraft traditions arising in the United Kingdom as anomalous. That's the proposal to the update. Dialogue. Why are we even covering this? There are traditional beliefs and cultures throughout history that we do not consider anomalous. We must not use our position to threaten the right of humanity to believe. Except, this is someone else speaking up, this does not extend from traditional practices. This new witchcraft is a modern invention, developed through a scholarly rereading of practices as an alternative to Christianity. It's not a continuation, and practitioners are attempting spellcasting. Someone else says, soon you'll say Aleister Crowley has something to do with it. The document is clear. The Urgy is anomalous. Religion and spirituality are not. Show me proof that they're casting spells that cannot be explained under rigorous testing, and I will personally see to containing those spells myself. Until then, no. Justice Thelema is allowed. Socialist witchcraft, for goodness sake, will allow Satanism as long as they aren't channeling demonic energies. And then 051 says, agreed. Furthermore, we will need all the faith we can muster against the theurgic traditions. We never know when a new faith will assist us in our cause. Conclusion, no update. Then, June 16th, 1945, update proposal, reevaluation of physics on the subject of nuclear fission. Thank you for responding to my emergency call. Trinity has happened. I can barely comprehend what I saw. It was like the sun rising from the desert sand, a dawn of destruction and fire that lasted for miles around. I cannot believe that such an explosion could ever be seen as possible. Tales and prior evidence of the summoning of gods have had less impact. I tremble with fear about the possibility of people wielding this kind of power, the ability to level a city with a flick of a switch. To which one of the other O5 members says, weren't the Germans and Russians also developing this technology? We are at war. This sort of escalation happens. Someone else says, may I remind my esteemed colleagues that we are not at war? The United States, Japan, they are at war. We are not nations. No, the question stands, is this anomalous? Do the physical effects follow from the mathematical concepts? They do follow. Scientific testing was completed each and every step of the way to reach this point. I do not believe this is anomalous, no matter how frightening the repercussions are. Someone else says, what, you're just going to let people hold the keys to their own destruction? We have fought tooth and nail to keep such capabilities out of the reach of man, and you're now saying we should abandon our purpose? 0512 says, we do not prevent destruction. We sequester the anomalous. As long as we agreed that the test was arrived through diligent scientific process, available to anyone, they're cut off by 053, who says available to anyone? Listen to yourself, man. Can't you imagine a future where any 2-bit dictator chooses to unleash the fire of 1,000 suns whenever he wishes? Maybe the problem isn't with the equations. Maybe the whole of nuclear physics is anomalous itself. Which gets 058 a little upset, who says, Enrico Fermi has already received a Nobel Prize for his work on transuranic elements and radioactivity. We can't just secure nuclear physics from the world. Radioactivity is everywhere, and we end up causing more contradictions when we try and send ourselves back to the Dark Ages. Try explaining chemistry without referring to the covalent bonds. Try explaining biology. Nuclear physics is here to stay, and we had better get used to the consequences of this, no matter how terrifying it will be for the planet and for humanity. 051 says, may God have mercy on our souls. I've got just a couple more for you here.
Okay.
This one, I think it's a fun idea, right? That they decide what is and isn't anomalous, and I think the meetings were the right way to go about it. I just think it didn't necessarily have to be an 001 proposal, you know?
Right. Yeah, it doesn't feel like that. Mm-hmm. But it does feel like, I don't know. Yeah, it's like an offshoot, like a behind the scenes or something like that. Yeah. I don't know how to explain it.
It doesn't really compare to, hey, yeah, the planet of hands.
Yeah.
But, like I said, I got two more for you here.
Okay.
Feels like minutes from a meeting. Yeah, I think that's what they were going for.
I think it was, yeah.
On February 4th, 2014, update proposal, classification of worm that walks phenomenon. For those unfamiliar with the topic, the worm that walks is a trope in which a character is actually a writhing hive mind of worms generally held together as a single mass. We're not here to discuss this trope. Instead, we're here to discuss the recent conspiracy that's arisen from it. The conspiracy is the idea that certain individuals are actually worms that walk and not humans.
Yeah, they keep running for office and we keep voting them in.
Someone else says, does the conspiracy have any merit? No, individual conspiracy believers are divided themselves on who is a worm that walks and who isn't, and all evidence indicates that there aren't actual worms that walk in the general populace. It pretty clearly falls under irreproducible, that's a tough word for some reason, conspiracy theories. I believe there's nothing we need to do or change in SCP-001. And then 053 says it might not be as irreproducible.
Good Lord, man. Let's just hope you stay that way. Goodness.
That's right. One of them says, why do you say that?
Because I can't even think of the word correctly now.
Irreproducible. To which he's responded with, on December 11th, 2013, a believer in the conspiracy from Decatur, Alabama, killed his neighbor under the belief that the neighbor was a worm that walks. The killer then took a video of his deceased neighbor and uploaded it to YouTube, claiming it was proof of the conspiracy and that the corpse was dissolving into individual worms before his very eyes. He said that he was going to take a sample. The video was very quickly blocked and removed, and everyone who has viewed the video agrees the subject is unmoving and does not dissolve into worms. The killer turned himself into the police while clutching a jar of Tubifex worms, and the neighbor sent to the Morgan County morgue. Autopsy confirmed that the descendant was missing a thumb post-mortem and killed by gunshot to the chest, which, if he were a worm that walks, would be survivable. So someone says, so this is just the actions of a sane man? No actual conspiracy? 053 then says, the one item of interest was that after the autopsy, the assistant coroner oversaw the return of the body of the next of kin. The assistant coroner was also a conspiracy believer, and despite not having had any prior contact to the parties involved, screamed in disgust upon entering the examination room, grabbing a mop and complaining about all the worms everywhere. No one else noticed any sign of worm infestation. Are we positive he didn't come across the video or anything? We weren't sure, so to test this, we acquired the corpse. They don't say how. They don't have to say how at this point.
Yeah.
And showed it to a number of D-class. They all agreed that it was a human corpse. We then introduced them to the worm that walks conspiracy, and upon viewing the corpse again, 20% of them agreed that it was actually a mass of worms. That sounds like a memetic hazard then, says 8. Has the conspiracy literature been scanned by the CH department? CH found it negative for memetic effects, but did find a chart in one pamphlet that would function like a monastic trigger, unlocking a memory. However, of course, it would only work if the affected had that memory. And what memory would that be? Having recently seen a living worm that walks. So in other words...
Yeah.
The last note here is from the 05 Council. It's specifically, I believe, from 05... Yeah, 055.
All right.
And it is to you. Hello. I'm afraid you won't find SCP-001 here. It's stored in a far more unreachable location than this. I'm sure you were hoping you could get it, edit in a couple places here and there, and voila, you're no longer anomalous. You're free to go. The Foundation will harass you no longer. Of course, it can't be that easy, but I'm going to help you. You deserve this much. I'm going to tell you why. Why the Foundation targets you. Why we deem you something to contain, to persecute. After all, there are far worse evils in the world. We kept our record of nuclear weapons above as an example. We shall see indeed. There are numerous genocides throughout history. The death toll from just the flu alone is far greater than the potential damage for thousands of the people and objects we contain. And yet, we dedicate ourselves to branding you anomalous. Something not normal, something inherently wrong, something that cannot be allowed its place. Why? I'm not going to patronize you and say there's nothing I can do. I'm only one voice on the council, and I can't change things on my own. That's true, but the decisions I make and the way I let myself view your circumstances are a direct cause of people seeing fit to throw you into a box. Even if I can't change the document, I could remain one more advocate for your normalcy. After all, humanity's believed in ghosts and spirits for thousands of years. We all believe in the monster under our beds when we're children. These phenomena are very real and very much a part of why the world works the way it does. Why can't we just declare them normal? Why won't I free you from your torment? It's because we aren't only here to secure, contain, and protect the world. We're here to secure, contain, and protect you. The defining feature of the anomalous is that it cannot be explained through simple scientific testing. This makes you and your nature different, unique even, and that scarcity makes it valuable. But that doesn't mean that your value is something everyone can appreciate. Sometimes it can only be appreciated by those who would use it against you. It goes on for a little while there in that vein, but you kind of get the point there.
Yeah, that's
ends with "You are the monster."
Yeah, that's some evil stuff. Mm-hmm. And yeah, you've heard that speech before, probably,
Yep.
but I'm not. We won't go into that.
The final line here, of course, and even if you still don't get why I'm doing this, please understand that I still love you.
Cruel.
Yep.
All right.
So I do agree with Chad. It lacks the gravitas the other ones have, but I do think that final twist of like, oh no, you think they're protecting you. No, you're one of the anomalies.
Right.
They decided you were anomalous long ago. And they decide on whims. All right.
Oof.
So now we dig into the Ouroboros cycle. I knew there was no way we could cover this whole thing in one episode anyway.
Right.
So I feel like breaking it up like this is the best way. But despite the fact that it may not seem like it's the same story, it is the same universe. It is the same story. Stuff from this first part will still tie into the last part.
Okay.
So I'll give you, next time we cover this, when we do parts 3 and 4, I'll give you a recap.
Okay.
A short recap, but
Okay.
This is SCP-001. It's written by DJ Cactus and Twisted Gears. DJ Cactus wrote parts 1, 2, 3, and 4, and Twisted Gears helped write part 2. Twisted Gears, for anybody who doesn't know, is Dr. Gears, an admin of the site now, I believe. Was not at the time, but anytime you hear Dr. Gears referenced, yeah, those were the short ones. Anytime you hear Dr. Gears referenced, that is who it's talking about. Is Twisted Gears is the one who made that. Exactly.
Well, yeah. Very nice.
This is the Ouroboros cycle, and its containment class is Thaumiel.
Okay.
It has all the power to free itself whenever it wants, and there's nothing you can do about it. Part 1, The Children. In the Sahara Desert, Global Occult Initiative 03, the Kingdom of Abaddon, has sent sorcerers to take over an SCP facility. Hundreds of MTF agents are sent to stop them, only to be nearly wiped out. Close proximity to the sorcerers causes near-instant vaporization. Near San Marco, Mexico, 05-1 starts the project Twins of God, overseen by himself and Omega-5, in an attempt to eradicate the Kingdom of Abaddon from afar. 05-1 has an anomalous item that, when fused into a host, has incredible power. 2 unexpected side effects are that it makes the host incredibly radioactive, and... I lost my place, I'm sorry. And those who get close are probably already dead. And that when item 001 is put into a host, things or people within a range of 20 meters suddenly and without warning atomize.
All right, then.
So I know that may feel like we just breezed through a lot of really important information. When I tell you that I took this story and I shortened it, I'm not joking when I say that I probably cut out about 80% of it.
Okay.
There is a whole section there about the base that's getting attacked by the Kingdom of Abaddon and the sorcerers and the way their magic works and everything. It is a really, really good story. And before starting on this project for the podcast, I did not care about the Ouroboros cycle. It was just the big one to me. It's like, well, in the time that I could read that one, I could read 7 of these other ones.
Right.
But now that I've actually got most of the way through it, it's really good.
Okay.
So just if you hear this and you go, man, that is a really interesting idea, go and read the whole thing. It's absolutely worth it.
Okay.
So Twins of God project started by 05-1. He's got this item. We're never told where he got it from. There are a couple ideas that come from, or if we are, I haven't got to that point yet, right, in part 4. But he has this anomalous item, and he can infuse it into people or objects, but it atomizes everything around him and it makes it very radioactive. The Kingdom of Abaddon attacks another facility in the Sudan, and with growing pressure on 05-1 to develop his weapon, he accelerates his testing and puts a mind kill switch into the hosts in an attempt to control their power. If they try to do anything he doesn't want them to do, he can just blow their brain up. So testing doesn't go well. They test with a bunch of people that they take from San Marco, Mexico, from the local population, and it does not seem to matter. No matter how many people they put this anomalous object into, they always are uncontrollable. So, 051 decides to spread it. Instead of putting it into one person, what if he breaks it up and puts it into multiple people? And I wish I could tell you that when I say he's putting it in them, I mean like he's shoving like shard or something in them. We don't know. A lot of times when you'll hear this story, people will say that, well, it was probably he condensed it down into a fluid and injected it into their veins.
Yeah.
We just don't know. We do know that they performed extensive surgery on these people, so it could be he's cutting them open and putting a chunk of it in them.
Okay.
And it's attaching to them, but the story never tells us exactly how he's doing that.
Okay.
But he decides to split it up over a bunch of multiple different hosts, hoping to dilute the side effects so it'd be easier to control. When they're running low on bodies, they decide instead of just abducting adults from the nearby town, they could take other people, like children.
Yeah, they're easier to catch.
Yeah. The administrator specifically tells them if they need more people, until the shipment of D-Class gets here, they can take homeless people from the edge of the town.
Yeah.
Not knowing that they've already been taking adults from inside the town anyway.
Okay.
And so now when he says this, they decide to go under 05-1, who is not the administrator in this version. They're two different people. The administrator started the SCP Foundation. 05-1 is just the leader of the 05 Council.
Okay.
Administrator's his boss. They instead break into a church and steal all the children. Okay. Because 051 has a plan. They break into the San Marcos de la Vida Eterna church and round up the younger churchgoers. Still not enough people. They need more children. The Foundation names the town Testing Site 001 and begins to gather people wholesale. The entire town is taken. At last, Omega 5 makes a breakthrough by spreading item 001 through 9 children. They can control the destruction. And we find out later this means full-on lobotomy, you know.
Ugh.
We get a note here then from Omega 51051 to the administrator. He says, "We did it. We managed the impossible. We spat in the face of God and took his throne for our own. It's a glorious new day. 055 was right about spreading the anomaly around a group. Even with all the reinforcements we had made to the previous test subjects, the amount of energy that Redacted managed to pump into their bodies was too much. Can't tell you how many D-Class we had to clean up off the floor after watching their skin melt off their bones, and the bones carbonize and blow away like dust. Dozens? Hundreds? I don't know. More than we were expecting, and more than the Foundation was willing to allow, even for a project like this. 13 has expressed regret over what we did in San Marco, but 13 is short-sighted, and the administrator is short-sighted. The deaths of a few, even the deaths of many, in order to protect the world from annihilation, it's nothing. Unless those children are gods now, their lives committed to a higher purpose. What life is better than that of the omnipotent? Testing begins tomorrow. Can you hear it?" The 9 children are alive,
Okay.
though sealed in tubes and unable to move or speak. They share a hive mind, and 05-1 keeps them locked away where only he can access them.
That's a really good. Okay.
The rest of Omega 5 regret this, as they see the kids locked in their tubes, kept alive by amniotic fluids and things like that. Have a good one, Dark. That's a good thing to leave on. I don't blame you.
Thank you, dear. See you later.
Enjoy your podcast.
Please.
They bemoan the loss of the children, and a few of them even feel like they ripped out their souls and put something else in the gap. But 051 is not deterred. 051 tested on a pole placed 5 kilometers away, then 800 kilometers away, then a steel sphere placed 1,000 kilometers away, then a Church of the Broken God worship site 11,500 kilometers away, and finally a man at roughly the same distance. All vaporize. Sounds good, Dark. We'll see you in the future then. Item 001, which now includes the 9 children in the classification, seems to have a limitless range and power, and only 05-1 holds the keyword to use it. The administrator is not happy.
Oh, yeah.
Also, just keep that in mind that he vaporized a Church of the Broken God. That's going to be important later.
Okay.
So this is 2051 from Administrator Williams. I've heard the good news of your success with Project 001 and cannot express to how important this is. We'll finally be able to put an end to Abaddon and be able to better protect ourselves in the future. To this end, I am eternally grateful. However, I must admit my concerns about you specifically, 051. Your recent letters have been troubling in spite of your successes. I have no doubt that you are the most qualified man to lead the Omega team, but I understand if the stress of the endeavor has taken a toll on you. I know it has with me. Regardless, once this is all over, I'm prepared to promote you to director of the newly constructed Site 19, after you've taken some time to recuperate, of course. We can discuss the details when I see you next month, once we've taken care of Abaddon. Sincerely, Administrator Williams. Now, during this time, the Kingdom of Abaddon has taken over most of the Middle East.
Okay.
Nobody can stop them.
Gotcha.
Tanks arrive and shoot at the sorcerers, and as soon as the bullets, or as soon as the rounds, or any of it gets close to the sorcerers, it just atomizes.
It's gone. Okay.
So, they are completely unstoppable. There's another letter that gets sent here. This is from 051 to the Administrator that says, I'm fine, Administrator. The project is finished. We will complete our task when you arrive. 1. 05-1. Just a 1 for his signature, not anything else, just 1.
Yeah.
The Administrator arrives at Site 1, and 05-1 whispers the keyword to item 001, and then whispers a name, which is how he's been controlling it this whole time. 05-1 pauses a moment, then whispers another. Omega 5 cheers as the Kingdom of Abaddon has surely been destroyed. And then the Administrator vaporizes. He's atomized. 051 makes his escape, leaving the children behind. Multiple doctors have fled with him. And we have here a letter, or a report sent to Overwatch Command from Director Harrison of Site 23 that says, my boys just came back with the reports. I'll send the pictures they took along with the letter, but I still can't believe it. It's all gone. Just desert that goes on for an eternity, like they were never even there. I had them. You're right. No bodies. There shouldn't be any, should there? Regardless, I don't know what devil you had to make a deal with, but thank you. So the Kingdom of Abaddon was also atomized at the same time that the Administrator was. Then I have, as the last little bit of part 1 here, part 1's kind of short. Again, it's a lot longer if you include all the stuff I cut out.
Right.
But a recording here. And this recording is pretty special, as you'll see as I get through here. But better to do this now, I think. Better to get it done while I can still remember it all. It's been a long time since I read this file. Longer still since that night in 26. It's been too long since people knew the truth of what we did and what happened to Abaddon and One and the Administrator. If the amnestics have held up, I might be the only one left who remembers. I have no intention of taking it to the grave with me. Not this. One was always charismatic. That much is on record. That's why the Williams gave him the lead of Omega 5 over 2, even though 2 had been with the Foundation longer. That's not to say that One wasn't smart. On the contrary, he is one of the most brilliant researchers I've ever worked with, even after all this time. He penned reports, most of the reports, for the work that Omega 5 did, even before we were a full-fledged team. Back when we were just a handful of junior researchers out of Site 17, he was eloquent and passionate and driven. He was also so detached. He loved his work, don't get me wrong, and the research was his greatest desire, but the direction of the Foundation, the stress on containment, he had no love for. He said to me many times that we were underutilizing our assets, that we could provide better containment of anomalies if we weren't so afraid of them, afraid to use them to contain others. He was the original designer of the Thaumiel classification, of course. Him and the Epsilon 2 research team. I think that's why he was so eager to jump at the chance to do what we were doing with 001. It was unprecedented, the 001 project, but then so was Abaddon. The logs here don't give the half of it, and the rest has been lost to history. With Abaddon, we were wildly, hilariously outmatched. A group of decently funded scientists and armed guards against a small army of type greens, which is reality benders. And we didn't even see the worst of them. Class 2s and 3s were more than a match for the best we had to offer. This was nearly a half-century before we'd see the first Scranton anchor. Some reports claim that the ruler was a Class 5. If true, then he could have blinked us off the map if he wanted. Abaddon was responsible for the complete destruction of 3 sites in 1922 alone. It wasn't just in sub-Saharan Africa either, although we certainly didn't publicize that. There was kingdom activity as far north as Gibraltar and as far south as Madagascar. They would enter sites, destroy everything, and leave with just a few objects. Shred the records, too. And what were we to do? We'd only just begun classifying reality benders, let alone combating them. Were they to make it to one of the larger sites in Europe or the Middle East? Would have been a bloodbath. If you're reading this, then you've read the logs about 001. You know what it does, how we built it. The gun to end all guns. A weapon crafted out of human bodies and fire that could annihilate anything, anywhere, at any time, all with just a brief description. One was fascinated by it. By them. The children. I can still hear them screaming while we put them into the machine and pulled their souls out and replaced it with something else. But it worked, and one was so proud. Then the time came to finish our task. The administrator flew in from 17, one of the handfuls of times I'd ever seen him in public. As exciting an event as it was, the air was thick with solemnity. We all knew the gravity of our task, understood that we were sentencing hundreds to death. I think that if we thought there was any other option, we might have shied away from the edge, but while we watched, one approached the glowing children and spoke the activation words. They were glorious in a way. The perfect balance of raw energy and human form. He leaned into them and spoke the name of Abaddon's Citadel. Then they burst with light and it was over. We had no way of knowing whether or not it worked, other than what we'd seen in other tests, and yet it felt finished. There was a feeling like a collective breath had been released. Then Williams disappeared, his clothes and protective gear falling to the ground in a heap, and as gunfire filled the testing chamber with smoke, we saw one sprinting towards an emergency exit, and 001 glowing again. After this, it was all a rush. A quiet ride back towards our bunker as MTF's teams rushed in to contain 001. A quick debriefing with other command officials, questioning, searches, it all blends together. One was gone, of course. They didn't find him. They never did. He wasn't the only one who left. 4 other members of our team alone went with him. A number of other junior staff members and then about half of the senior staff at Site 15 defected. All disappeared without a trace. Items, too, right out of their cells. They discovered later that it was a long time in the making, and one had helped foster the 001 project just to meet this end. We buried the children deep beneath San Marcos, covered them in about 50 meters of concrete. They didn't say a word when we put them in lead bags, not that it would have helped. They didn't say anything when we separated them. They didn't say anything when we closed the tomb on top of them. I doubt they'll ever say anything ever again. I have no doubt that they're still alive, though. The most powerful weapon in the world, armed and loaded, without its trigger. One has the trigger, and one alone. With any luck, it died with him. In the end, we were left in charge, the 8 of us who remained. We picked 5 more, the brightest we could find, and pushed on. Abaddon was gone without a trace. There was still so much to do. But we found a way to push forward. We made do, and in the end, we overcame. I still think about the children under San Marco from time to time. About the links we went to when we were panicked and afraid. About the things we did, even outside of the project. I think about one, too. I wonder if he found what he was looking for. I wonder if he thinks it was worth it. I received a message through the secure system nearly 1 year ago today. I said nothing then, but I'm going to add it to the file now. As for the contents, I'll let others decide. I've said enough. So then this is the message that was sent to 05-13.
All right.
And it says, 13. When we were young, you asked me if I thought that our dreams would ever be realized. If we would ever be able to keep the world truly safe and hang it up for good. You asked me if I thought we had the means to do so, or if the means existed at all. You asked me to what lengths must we go, what prices we must pay, what allegiances we must forge in order to achieve perfection. I did not know then. I do know now. There will come a day when the secrets that the Foundation has tried to hide away will rise up from the shifting sands in glorious appearance. When the subjugated will break free from the bonds of their captors, and when the march of progress will no longer be impeded by those who would huddle around their fires, swatting at the ever-growing shadows. On that day, the Foundation will be cast aside, and all that will remain is purpose. Do you hear the black moon howling, 13? You will. Soon. Vive la insurrection. And that's where part 1 ends.
Okay. Interesting. I'll see
They
that.
made a gun to end all guns.
Yeah. And then buried it.
Yeah. Because they were so upset by what they'd done. Which paints the Foundation in kind of a different light than you see it most of the time.
And I think they didn't want any way for one to be able to whisper to them.
Yeah, I think that's what it actually was.
Yeah, you know. Which is cool because that one makes me think of whispers
Yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah.
So the villain in Sense 8 on that. So that's the end of part 1.
That's the end of part 1. I got one more part for you before we stop tonight.
Okay.
And that's part 2, The Broken God.
Well, I'm glad we're going in order.
Right. And this one is Masker classification. This is a special classification. It only exists for the Broken God. It was an interesting one. I think the children is an interesting start. But Masker only exists for the Broken God because he cannot ever truly be contained. Right now, he cannot ever truly be contained. That's what that means. And this one is subtitled Apotheosis.
Okay.
SCP-001 is a collection of anomalous items, formerly a single massive mechanical entity assembled by members of the Church of the Broken God in late 1942 near La Paz, Mexico. Now, I want to give you a brief catch-up on the Church of the Broken God. I mentioned them in our first big SCP episode as one of the factions of the world. Excuse me, I'm so sorry. Church of the Broken God started when a young boy found the beach, which is SCP-1277, I believe. The boy found the beach, and a voice spoke to him out of heaven. Probably not actually heaven, though, because of what happens, telling him that he had been chosen to go lay down on the beach, that the beach in 1277 is highly magnetically charged.
Okay.
There's a lot of metal particles in the air.
Right.
And the boy laid down, and the voice from the sky told him that he was God, this was his forge, the boy was his anvil. Ouch. And he slammed the hammer down on him in the form of a bolt of lightning.
Yeah.
And when he did, the prophecy of the broken God was burned into the boy's brain. And the boy then called upon his family to join him, which they did, and they were blessed by the God as well, the broken God.
Okay.
So that's how that started, is the boy began to prophesy, saying that the parts of the broken God would be revealed and that they would be brought together, and at one point they would become the unbroken God, and then the unbroken God would rule over everything.
Gotcha.
So Church of the Broken God has collected a handful of anomalous artifacts near La Paz, Mexico in 1942. These include SCP-217, which is the machine virus. It causes people to become mechanical.
Okay.
It eats away at their skin and replaces it with machinery.
It's the Borg.
Kind of. SCP-1139, which is the language scrambler box. If you have it's a little tin box, and if it's around you and it gets hit by any kind of charge of electricity, which doesn't have to be just AC, like alternating current, any kind of charge, it will scramble the language of everybody around it. It's almost like a box of apples, right?
Gotcha.
Welcome back.
That's what you get for living.
There is no cure for it, so it's just, hey, if it happens to you, you can never learn your language again. You can never learn any non-scrambled language again. Sucks to suck.
Yeah, I guess so.
SCP-882, which is the growing machine.
Yeah, I think there's a denomination that talks about it. The Assembly of God. I thought it was already put together. I'm not a theologian.
So, yeah, this God is broken.
Okay.
But the growing machine is where if you put, it's like a core of gears, and if you, any other metallic surface touches it, it is pulled into the machine and repurposed from the machine. So that's SCP-882. And then several internal components of SCP-629, which is Mr. Brass. He is a man made out of brass. He can talk and eat and everything. So they ripped out a lot of his guts.
As you do.
There's a few more, but those are the big ones. And I'm sure you can see, this is not bleach, that's true. I'm sure you can see a handful of what's going to happen when you combine all of these SCPs together.
Yeah.
Members of the Church of the Broken God combined the various anomalous objects in an effort to restore their deity.
Yeah.
Upon activation, SCP-001 reportedly began to integrate metallic objects into itself while actively seeking other anomalous objects. So that is the combinations of the growing machine along with the machine virus.
Yeah.
It was trying to feed, right?
And it became the Dark Gundam.
Sort of. Yeah.
Okay.
Sort of.
Let's get this straight now.
SCP-001 and the resulting 001 apotheosis event that took place as a result of its assembly was the cause of significant environmental changes in Western Mexico and required one of the most widespread use of amnestics to date. Post-event, the active components of SCP-001 were taken to Foundation sites for containment, while the inactive component of SCP-001 remained on the bottom of the Gulf of California at approximately, and then it gives a depth, which is minus 108.418369. So we're going to get to how all that happened, but it's very important that you know that this is true. This is something that was...
Spoilers, God.
In 1942. Okay. All of this happened.
Right, okay.
So, let me make sure I get to the right part here. I don't want to skip too far ahead. The inactive component of SCP-001 is to remain in its current location at the bottom of the Gulf of California, and any shipping or diving is forbidden in that area. Civilian discovery of SCP-001 is to be suppressed, and amnestics are to be utilized in order to maintain classification. Persons affiliated with the Church of the Broken God who make active attempts to seek out the inactive component of SCP-001 are to be taken into Foundation custody and questioned. Information pertaining to SCP-001, whether physical or digital, is to be confiscated and contained. Makes sense, right? The inactive component of SCP-001 is expected to remain inanimate. However, should SCP-001 experience spontaneous reanimation, all active Mobile Task Force units at nearby Site 17, Site 44, Site 90, and Site 101 are to be assigned to active countermeasures should this event, currently designated as 001 Apotheosis Event 2, occur in the modern world. It is believed that current means of information suppression would be insufficient. It's likely that 001 Apotheosis 2 would result in an SK-class Broken Masquerade scenario, and following that, an XK-class End of the World scenario.
The end of the world. Forget about it.
Then we have some background of how this happened, right?
Okay.
There's a transcript of a statement by Father George Castillo in August of 1945. Fernand was the first, I think, the one who contacted me after they'd found the heart. The way they described it, the fervor that was in their eyes, it captivated me, and I knew them. I knew that they had done it. I want to meet with Anthony and Salvador the weekend after my sister's confirmation. When they showed it to me, I was taken aback. It was little more than a pile of gears, pistons, tickling pieces of clockwork, and lubricated metal parts, all dutifully churning along without a power source.
Sounds like a party.
Within it, I saw the heart, just as they described. It spoke to me, not like you and I would speak to each other, but with images and feelings and pain. It was in so much pain. Like the spark that had given it life had made it realize what it was, or what it wasn't, and it desired only to be whole again. Desire is a strong word, perhaps. Not desire more than it was impulse. Something within the creature drove it forward towards some unthinking, unfaltering end. The creature they presented to me was not like the other artifacts I'd found and blessed. This one was different. There was something wrong with it, and I did not know until later what they had done. I begged Salvador to take it back to the beach and undo it, that it was not right. This is the same beach, SCP-2217. Right. I have it written down here. So
cool.
But they would hear nothing of it. It started moving before I left, shaking enough from side to side that it could achieve locomotion. It hobbled over to a wrench, and the wrench became part of its body. They said to me, "Our God is unbroken." I never saw them again. Then in 1946, we have an interview with Francis Bollinger, who says, it didn't use words or any kind of language. It would make metallic sounds, but at the same time, images and concepts would come to mind when we were around it. Have you ever felt when you have a thought or idea, and it's all there, born whole in your mind, you still had to think the words for it, despite knowing the sentiment before you finished the sentence? It was like that, but from an alien mind. Truly, the words of the divine. I hate that feeling, by the way. I just want to clarify. When you know what something is, but you can't remember what it's called, hate that feeling. This is from an interview in 2007, which you might recall is after the events in 1948.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's how time works. But I do want to ask, sorry.
Yes, please, go ahead.
Okay, so this note you're picking to reach 2007. The one you just got through was 1948, right?
1948, yeah.
Okay, so we're jumping to 2007, okay.
Yeah, and we're going to go back to 1948, but this one's important for... I cut out a bunch of other notes, too.
Yeah.
And got the ones that just give you the core of what they're trying to say. Because it's a mystery that slowly gets unveiled. But I love the Ouroboros cycle. I don't think the mystery works all that great when you start it by going, hey, it uses these components. Yeah. It's like, oh, well, then I know already what it's going to do. So I cut out a lot of the mystery stuff. Did you know that's a rather large time skip? So, 2007, Trixie Silva, agent of the UIU, the Unusual Incidents Unit. If you remember, that's the United States government's version of the Foundation. Yes. She says, there were a few wolves. Wait, you know what those are, right? They're like hunters. They work for the Horizon Initiative. They confronted us near a church in Santa Margarita, wanted us to turn in the stuff that had been collected for the Church of the Broken God, like the Abrahamic stuff we handed over. We deliberated on whether we should give it to them. Our stance with the HI has been a bit shaky, more so in recent memory. While we've been on good terms with the local broken churchgoers, the wolves are more aggressive. We looked over what we had, and while we did, this woman walked up. I don't know where she came from. She dressed like a hippie, thin iron chains for hair, but she seemed distant the whole time. The look in her eyes, her abnormal smile, like she was hardly there. She looked at what we had and said she only wanted this. I don't actually know what it was. A metal box. It whirred and clicked. Put out a little beam of light on one end when I picked it up. Felt lighter than I would have thought. I asked why it was important to her, and she said it was easier to show me than to tell. She brought her forehead to mine and kind of offset. We stood there for a moment, and then suddenly she rammed her chin down and made me jerk down. The world dropped beneath me, and I fell. Something clicked in my mind, an image of two gears formerly meshed together, now broken away. I felt the teeth of my spine arch out as I bent over. One step, and I clicked along on the multi-dimensional cog that was the planet. It spun around the furnace of the sun, tethered to it by a chain that was gravity, and we hurtled together through an oily cosmos with all the power of an infinitely unwinding spring. Sorry, it was an experience. Not a religious experience, but yeah. She told me to pick the box back up, and it felt a lot heavier than before. I couldn't actually tell if it had more weight or if it just meant more to me now. I gave it to her, and I wouldn't hear anything otherwise from the wolves or my teammates or my superior.
Okay, well, I want to figure out where to get me one of them boxes.
Right? Sounds like a pretty crazy deal.
Pretty crazy experience right there. There you go.
So
all right.
This is an interview with someone that has broken off from the Church of the Broken God.
An apostate of the Church of the Broken God.
Yes. Okay. And when I tell you that Williams is in charge here, I mean that it is Administrator Williams doing this interview.
Okay.
And this is back in time. So we're jumping back. The part about the box was important. That's why we grabbed it, but we're jumping back now.
Okay.
So Williams says, all right, you mentioned the heart earlier. Were you there when they found it? Randall says, no, not at all. I was out of the country at the time, working with a new mission in Panama. I only heard about Ezekiel after the fact. Who was Ezekiel? One of Bumaro's agents. Before he was made leader of the church, Robert would keep a number of them around. These individuals who were in tune with God and could feel its presence, speak to it. Ezekiel had discovered an artifact of some value, and Bumaro took him on afterwards. These agents were the first to experiment with the augmentations as well, and as you can imagine, many of them died. But not Ezekiel. No, he was very close to Bumaro. And I don't know if he would have risked Ezekiel's well-being. It doesn't matter. Ezekiel didn't need augmentations to speak to the god. He was just capable. So what does Ezekiel have to do with the heart? Well, you heard Avery tell you that they had a stockpile of artifacts, right? Anything that one of these agents touched, if they felt something, they would have it shipped to La Paz with the rest of it. Most of it was worthless, but every now and then they'd find something legitimate. The purifier, the one, whatever you call it, one of the agents discovered that near DePaul. They had tendons and ligaments and everything else, but they were all just parts. They would move on their own, but they didn't do anything together. How do you mean? The texts refer to the god reassembling itself once the pieces are brought before the heart. All you need to do is feed the heart a limb, and the god will have a limb. But they couldn't find a heart. Probably shouldn't say this. There were a couple of agents who had claimed to have found one, but they were all the same useless pieces of machinery as the rest. Where does Ezekiel figure into all this? Ezekiel was the one who told Bomaro that if they could not find a heart, maybe they could build one of their own. This, at the time, flew directly in the face of church doctrine. The leadership, if they had known, would have excommunicated him. But it was quickly becoming clear that the project couldn't last through the summer. I was sent in with my mission to resupply them after Ezekiel had left, and their supplies were nearly exhausted. Our records indicate that the heart was something they discovered. Is that not true? Of course it isn't true. You can't preach to a congregation about God giving parts of himself to you and then turn around and tell them that the most essential part is something you conjured up out of nothing. Mm-hmm. Worse than nothing, though. The details of what they did to create the heart and make it live were never revealed to me, but you can draw conclusions from evidence. There was a drought that year, and the polio crisis hit an all-time high. Thousands died, all of natural causes. A freak event, never accurately recorded because of the attention on the war. Dios mío, but who can say? William says, you think the two are related? Randall says, I think the timing's too coincidental. And knowing what I know about what that thing became, I think the answer's clear. That was not the heart of God, Agent. That was something different entirely. And we are almost done with this part. I know it feels like it's gone on a little while, but I have a little bit more for you here.
Okay.
Video recovered from a local documentary film crew. Now, of course, 1948, it's mostly black and white footage, entirely black and white footage, but it is, the shot begins on a destroyed home. The wreckage centered around the garage. Metal fragments and strips of rubber trail down the driveway and onto the asphalt. Go down the street. Pieces of various automobiles are strewn throughout the street and the sidewalk. The trail leads to SCP-001, which is integrating a truck into its chassis. SCP-001 continues to the nearest house where it begins consuming the gutters. Residents of the area flee the scene, several injured by discarded shards of glass and twisted metal discharged by SCP-001. Lights produced from various parts of SCP-001's body focus on the various prone figures. A section along the undercarriage of 001 alters and drops away from the main body, which continues down the street in source of more sources of material. The ejected subsection continues alterations, forming a vertical pod somewhat resembling a human spine and ribcage. Pod collapses in various areas, the rib-like protrusions extending outward as the rest of the pod changes into a humanoid form, roughly 3 meters tall. Light is produced from the head, which is focused on a nearby civilian. The metal humanoid picks up the civilian, who appears to be dead, and places it into a small chamber between the humanoid's ribs. The ribs vibrate as the humanoid approaches a second civilian, who is attempting to crawl away. She attempts to struggle as the humanoid lifts her and places her inside its chest cavity. The humanoid turns away from the camera to approach a third civilian, and what appears to be the woman's dismembered hand falls to the floor. From there, a growth appears on its back, which then leaves and climbs up onto a building, and when the pod bursts open, there are 3, one of which is not moving, mechanical people. The man that it grabbed, that was on the ground mostly dead, now has buzzsaws for hands.
Okay.
And the woman now has thin strings of chain for hair.
Okay.
Which may remind you of something. Just throw that out there.
Yeah.
So, after this, the camera view dies as the woman waves to the people holding the camera. The next thing that I have for you is a phone call from Father Bomaro to a agent that has been placed within the Church of the Broken God.
Okay, Father Bramaro?
Yes, this is the one that the other agent, Randall, was saying worked with Ezekiel to create the heart.
Got you, yes, okay.
So the call begins, and Bumaro says, hello. The agent says, bless you, Father. Bumaro says, Dimitri. The agent says, no. He says, of course. Bless you, child. How is the little Lord? Stronger every day, Father. We had to move him from the back of the office into a warehouse nearby. He's being fed. As you required? Good. When will you be moving him to Penasco? Within the week, Father. We're only waiting for the next train. It may need to be sooner. There was a raid in La Paz 2 weeks ago. 3 of our men have not been accounted for. There is growing Foundation activity nearby. Father Bumaro cuts out for a moment, and the agent hears him say in the background, tomorrow. And finally he says, yes, we had expected them to head north, but they've come west instead. A minor setback. The agent says, what about the safe house? There's nearly 100 other artifacts here. And Bumaro cuts off and says, a minor setback. They don't know where it is, and even if they did, this isn't their priority right now. Their eyes and the eyes of the rest of the world are on Europe. As their gaze settles there, they will not realize our accomplishment until they are powerless to stop him. The agent says, that was something I needed to talk to you about, Father. Our God is ravenous. We cannot seem to satiate him. The supplies we are given are not. Bumaro cuts him off and says, what is the issue? He says, Father, our Lord is eating his own housing. We cannot convince him to stop. He cannot be reasoned with. Bumaro says, nonsense. The heart of the devout may speak directly to our God. Can you not hear his words when he reaches out to you? Do you not feel the machine moving inside of you? Or do you need more proof other than the living, breathing God before your eyes? Agent says, no, Father, it's not that. Bumaro says, I will hear nothing of it. For years we have prayed and asked for our God to be the unbroken before us, and now he has presented himself. We know that the divine will speak to the heart of the devout. You are telling me there are none among you who are devout enough to commune with our Lord. Tell me now so you can be replaced. The agent says, our faith is strong, Father. Forgive my insolence. I am misguided. Bumaro says, see to yourself then. I worry for your faith. Have one of your brothers, one who is stronger than you. Have him speak to the Lord and tell him of the necessity of secrecy. Our Lord will understand, no doubt. The unbroken God is a reasonable God. The call ends. So, shortly after that, we get a conversation here with the MTF team that has gone to investigate what is going on. Because the agent reports in,
right,
lets them know, hey, the broken God is here, he's doing stuff.
Yeah.
And so they send in a team. It's almost a freak accident, and I won't include that whole call because it's pretty long,
okay,
but it's almost a freak accident that the team is even there on time because they were being pulled out to go deal with the war because such a great war is causing anomalies.
Right.
And so the only reason they didn't get pulled out is because the broken God ate train station, so there's no trains running.
Fair enough.
And so basically the conversation here is from Director Cornwell to Commander Peterson.
Okay.
And Director Cornwell asks him about their first interaction with SCP-001. Peterson says, well, the rail stopped running, if that's what you mean. We got word from the local authorities there'd been an accident up north and the trains weren't heading to the border anymore. It wasn't a huge issue for us since we could have taken a couple vehicles and headed east till we hit one of those little towns on the front of the mountains. Most of them were hooked up to a separate rail line entirely. We could have gotten out that way. But the big stuff, the stuff that the train had been sent to La Paz for, couldn't just be moved. So we were going to wait it out. Then DeMarco had the bright idea to send a party up the rail line to see where the holdup was and see what we couldn't do to clear it. He led the expedition himself. I need to...
Leisure.
Thank you. I could feel it coming. Cornwell says, what happened to Agent DeMarco? Peterson says, you know exactly what happened to him, Bill. Cornwell says, for the record. Peterson says, fine. We didn't hear back from them after 3 days, and we're going to send the rest of the leadership east anyway, so they'd have to wait. But then after 5 days, one of DeMarco's guys showed up at our camp. He was delirious, talking about the World Eater, and how the rest of the guys had gotten mulched. And they had, hadn't they? I know it wasn't as big then as it ended up, but it wasn't something to mess around with, DeMarco. Cornwell says, are you all right? Peterson says, yeah. He tried to kill it. Of course he did. He probably knew then that we wouldn't find out until later that we couldn't contain this thing. There wasn't a hole in the world big enough to put it in, or a box that it wouldn't eat its way out of. But it didn't matter for him, or anyone he went with. The machine didn't care. Cornwell says, when did you first see it? Peterson says, December. Once we'd hunkered in, I was part of an expeditionary team that flew up there to get a good look at it. It was already, you saw what it did to that side of the country. I've never seen anything that big that can move. It was like a mountain of moving parts, blackening the sky as it burned through whatever it was shoveling into in its chest. And it was small then. It was, I don't know. We all had XK event preparation training, but this went above and beyond everything we had trained for. It was inevitability. We knew that we were going to die and that this thing was going to kill us. It was just a matter of when. So, there's some letters that get sent out from there. I'm going to skip those two for the entrance of time.
Okay.
But there's some really good letters in there that get sent from people trying to let their families know, like, hey, I'm probably not coming home from the NTF teams.
Oh, gotcha.
Like, hey, we wrote these letters. We're not going to make it. The following, however, as we get into the last little bits of this, is an interview from a Global Occult Coalition member named Revenant, codenamed Revenant. And if you don't remember the Global Occult Coalition, they're one of the other groups that is trying to do what the Foundation is doing.
Yes.
And they don't like the Foundation.
Right.
They think that you should be able to use the occult to be able to protect the world. They don't like the Foundation, says no.
Fair enough.
So he says, there's this story that gets told among Foundation agents, something that the grizzled veterans will tell the Greenhorns during the long nights of guard duty on some cell block or another. I don't know who started it, but I know they still tell it. It's been a half century, and they still get it right. You can give them that much credit. They say, don't you know, the GOC killed God. But the Greenhorns will say, no, that's not true. God's in a cell at site whatever. The GOC didn't kill God. And they're talking about that type green they've got locked up somewhere. The one who says he's the Christian God. Then the vets will smile and shake their heads and won't say anything because they all know. They know that in 1943, in the midst of the apocalypse, the Foundation could do nothing but watch the end while the Allied Occult Initiative, a poorly funded, undermanned, inadequate predecessor to the Coalition, saved the world. The metaphorical gun was found on an island off the coast of Greece, which is the same beach that the boy found.
Yeah.
The broken God. I can't even remember what it looked like. All I get is this sort of fuzzy recollection the amnestics leave you with. But I distinctly recall it wasn't as heavy as you'd think. Why the amnestics? I was with the detachment deployed in the area. Apparently one of the pieces had some mind-altering effects to it. I have a vague sense of feeling something wrong, so I'll take their word for it. I don't remember what it looked like. I can't recall how it destroyed that much land. I barely remember when it happened, and the only reason I know where is all the before and after maps. But I can still feel it in my gut. That wasn't how things were meant to be. We stood before what looked to be an angry and vengeful God, and all it did was beg us to kill it. We were all too happy to oblige.
Retake,
thank you. So, the actual events of the massacre. We don't have all of what happened. We know that the Broken God got to a large enough size, SCP-001 apotheosis, that it was able to propel itself forward, and there was no stopping it at that point.
Right.
That it grew to a size bigger than a mountain, and that in scooping up all the machinery, it also was scooping up dirt and converting it into fuel. In the process of scooping its way up, it cut the Gulf of California into the world.
Okay.
It carved its way all the way up there, and that was a space of 891 kilometers or 553 amerimeters. And again, it's the only reason why the Gulf of California exists today.
Is that Arizona Bay?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. At one point, it had gotten so big, near the point where it died in Baja, California, that it reached towards the heavens And SCP-2399, the spaceship that is hiding inside the red spot of Jupiter,
Right.
came down and shot it. And it took the shot and kept reaching.
Oh.
With the idea being that it was going to rip it out of the sky and make it a part of itself.
All right.
And with the inherent idea being that then it is SCP-2399 that was talking to the boy, that is the actual spirit of the broken god, and that is waiting for its parts to come back together. But this was not the true broken god because
they built the heart.
they built a heart.
Yeah.
And so, in the middle of all this, a single AOI agent, we don't know who it was. A lot of people think it's Revenant, and he just can't remember
Okay.
because the amnestics. But a single AOI agent, which became the Global Occult Initiative, the GOI, approached it and activated the device, which killed it. All the pieces became inert. The heart fell into the ocean, in the Gulf.
Okay.
And all the other parts that were other SCPs fell out onto the ground, and they still function, but they aren't coming together anymore.
Okay.
There were multiple attempts to get the heart back afterwards, and every attempt has led to death.
Okay.
Divers that go down to get it, and they go back down because diver didn't come up, and they find their head is crushed within the gears
Yeah.
of the heart. The Foundation has contained most of the pieces in seawater because they found out from diving to try and check out the heart that seawater causes it to rust rapidly. And although it destroys the rust as quickly as it can't function fully because it's constantly rusting again.
Okay. Gotcha.
Casualties are estimated to be no fewer than 2 million.
Okay.
This thing nearly caused the end of the world, and the Foundation couldn't do anything to stop it.
Right.
And there is one last little twist in here, because of course there's always going to be something, right?
Okay.
Which is, there's an interview here from, here it is. Let me make sure I got the right one. There's an interview here from the team that tried to recover it last. And I'll read parts of it, I'll skip through parts of it and get to the last part, because it's pretty long.
Okay.
But the mobile task force that was sent to go recover the pieces says, we took what we could from the shores first. Little things, gears and pulleys and pistons, things like that. A lot of it was garbage, but they were still twitching, spinning, turning. Still had life in them. The small stuff sort of died off after a couple hours, but I heard that the bigger pieces were still churning weeks later, like cutting the head off a chicken. The important parts, the ones we knew were actual church artifacts, we managed to bag and get moved to the train in La Paz for transport. I counted maybe 100 individual anomalous artifacts. Some of the boys at the train station joked they'd have to build a whole new site just to keep it all. We kept casualties low, fortunately, mostly guys just being dumb around machinery, acting like it still couldn't take their arms off. Rodriguez got his hand crunched and had to help move him to the local clinic. Only one death. One of the locals was hired to dive down into the bay and get straps around the heart so we could pull it up. Said they found him with his head smashed between two moving pieces. Said it looked like he'd shoved it in there himself. I don't know. I didn't see it. I did see the tags, though. You know when a place manufactures something, and in order to identify where the part came from, they'll get a big piece of metal with their name on it and attach it to the side of it? We saw plenty of those on other parts, the stuff that had been collected while it was eating its way into the sea. None of the church artifacts did, though. They all buzzed along like everything else, but they weren't marked. You could feel something when standing next to them, like serenity. The whole project was marked like that. Or the whole project was like that. It felt calm, like relief. Except for the heart. When we finally got it out of the bay, we had to keep it on the shore for a day because of the weather. Some of the locals started to get itchy. Said they were hearing voices, wouldn't go near it. Didn't matter just how much money we offered them. Had to wait to bring in more support from the base up north just to get it loaded on the ship. I don't know. I've seen all kinds of things with this job, but my mimetic resistance is pretty high. I had to pass a handful of tests just to get this assignment, and everything was clean. But I can't deny another kind of feeling around the heart. I don't know if I'd say I was hearing voices, but the tags. It was as we were leaving and loading it on the ship that was going to take it north that I saw them for the first time. I didn't even think to say anything then. Didn't even pass my mind until I started looking into some other files. Then that ship crashed in the storm, and they lost the heart. And the whole time I kept thinking about those metal tags. I realized it then, I think. That wasn't a church artifact. That said property of the Foundry. If you remember, the Foundry was a different SCP,
Yeah.
001.
Yes.
Which the heart of the Foundry was made by sacrificing thousands of people to it.
Yeah.
And so
Interesting.
the last little thing they give in here is that a member of the Church of the Broken God that calls himself a prophet says that this is not the end. Humans were the problem, and humans will always be the problem, but the broken God itself is still
usually the way it works.
Alive. And that, apart we are broken, but united we are God. With the goal being that they will become the cogs for the broken God to come back again, which means more human sacrifice, which means they learn nothing.
These people never seen the human centipede?
I don't think so.
Oh, gosh.
I don't think so.
Let's see that. No, I like that. The idea is like, look, that is not the heart that it's supposed to be. Humans built it. It was flawed.
Well, and then also, when you go back to 2007, she found that box.
Yes.
And the woman that clearly had been taken over by this one, she was the one with the wire hair, found that box.
Yeah.
It's probably the real heart.
Possibly.
But all the parts now are...
Or that's what they used to stop that one.
Right. Hard to say.
Yeah.
But I really like that one. I don't think it's as good as part 3 and part 4.
Okay.
But I think it's definitely stronger than part 1. Part 1's not bad. But
right.
I think it definitely improves as it goes.
Well, it starts, I think what it seems like is going to start bringing something a little bit bigger, bigger, and lay it on top so you get like the layer story 3. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Sure, we'll get around to that at some point. We have a good excuse to do it in January.
Yeah.
I like that quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm really excited for you to get into... I'll give you the names of part 3 and part 4.
Okay.
Part 3 is Atonement.
All right.
Part 4 is The Way It Ends.
That's the last part, right?
Yep.
Okay, yeah.
The Way It Ends.
Okay.
But no, I really like this whole universe that they created for this. Because it's, hey, these two things may not seem like they tie in together at all. But no, they do.
Yeah.
They do.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think that's some of the attraction for SCPs, because it's a possibilities, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that could be anything. Yeah.
No, I agree. So I know that we didn't cover as much as some people might have wanted us to. Again, there's so much more to both of those.
Yeah.
If you want the whole thing where they get into like how the O5 Council feels about the Broken God and what's going on with O5-1 in part 1, we cut out a bunch of that. How he named the children. There's a lot. But
Okay.
this is the dip. If you want to go read the rest, you absolutely should. But,
excellent.
So where are we going next week?
I don't know. Wonder.
Let me pull up the list.
I
I'm
wonder.
going to go ahead and put this to sleep.
I don't know. I can still. Wake up!
Indeed.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Appreciate that. I don't know. I tried digging into Morocco more. I try to separate some stuff out.
Yeah.
Also, we're coming up on the end of the year, and I'd like to go back through all my little Word documents.
Yeah. Do like a catch up?
Yeah, and just like pick one thing. Let's pick one thing out of each.
Okay.
And try. I want to try to build a world that way, I think.
Okay.
So, yeah,
that might take more than one episode. Do you want to do that next week and see if it's going to be
just a different? But yeah, I'll have everything open next week.
Okay.
So we'll go through and we'll pick out, see if we can make a unique pantheon type of way with this imagery. Not
Galvarino.
Galvarino's got to be in there somewhere.
He's the god of war.
Yeah.
Step over, Ares.
Yeah, I think so. I think that would be a good yeah. But say you want to do something like that with it.
Yeah, that sounds like a blast.
All right, cool. There was a couple of good what was the second one?
Well, we had God's Blind Spot.
God's Blind Spot. I think it was the second one you did.
Then we had
I thought that was funny.
The Normalcy.
Yeah.
And then we had the Ouroboros Part 1, The Children, and Part 2, The Broken God.
Yeah.
So, hopefully you all enjoyed that. I love talking about SCP stuff, and it was a lot of work to get this stuff cut down, but it was absolutely worth it if you had a good time. I had a good time.
Yeah.
So,
I like hearing about it, man. I appreciate it.
Of course.
So, I actually stay away. I don't go looking at SCP stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, once we get through the 001s, we're just going to be blitzing through them. It'll be like 10 an episode at least, I would think. But there's some really good stuff in the 001s, and I think they set the stage for everything to come. Because in the 001s, you learn about... If you guys want to chat in there, yeah, I figured we'd just use the regular chat, but that's up to you. But...
okay.
In there, you learn about...
You make a one-time, like, hey, Friday night, boom.
Yeah, that's true. Make a post in there. I could. Yeah.
Make like a one-time thing that they can connect to that, I guess,
Mm-hmm. Well, we have a Gundam Game Day Discord from way back when.
Oh.
That King is the mod of.
You're going to have to go dig up some passwords and stuff.
Yeah, we haven't used that one in a while.
Fair enough. Okay.
No, I like the 001s because you get the Scranton Anchors, you get the Amnestics, you get the T-Class. It's all...
Like you get the foundation.
Yeah. And you get to see what they're really like before you get into like, yeah, it's a piece of toast that when you flip it over, it toasts on that side too.
Well, I like how it's got, like, okay, just ground rules from somebody who doesn't know, right? Like the SCP Foundation is mirror, even though they're greater than the U.S. government, the CIA, and everything. That's the model.
Yeah, that's the model for sure.
Right,
for sure.
And you can almost guarantee that, they're probably doing something terrible right now as you speak for the greater good.
Yeah,
that thing. I don't know. I like this setup. I like it. It's obviously fantasy. I mean, stuff's so far out there. Going through each one, but I like the setup. And this idea of these technical documents, so to speak. Yeah. I like giving you the breakdown. Go through it.
No, I like it a lot.
I'm looking forward to hear the rest of that, man. And take it further, hear about some of the weird stuff that people think up out there.
I was not planning on us doing voice chat tomorrow during the stream. I figured we'd just do the regular stream style while we get back into the swing of doing Gundam games. Mostly because I just want to show that game off. Because now we have a bunch of people that haven't even seen that game, Okay. But we'll see. That might change, but we'll see. But
all right.
But that does bring it up to us. We are doing a Gundam game tomorrow. It's going to break at 3.
Yes.
So starting at regular time, not 5. Starting at 7.
This is a little bit of a throwback thing as well.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. We used to do Gundam Game Day streams once a month.
Yeah.
And they were really long streams, like 8-hour streams. And they were really fun, but...
I'm going to talk to him about that. I want to bug him, Will. All right.
That's 8 hours is a long time.
Oh, no, yeah.
To sit in one chair and not eat, not get up, But...
All right, so what if we do it here, right? We're going to have an alarm. Or we'll have some kind of thing. It's like, I got to take a break. We're going to have to go over there and on the misfortune of your birth. Yeah. Well, we'll stand up, stretch the legs.
Yeah.
Maybe do a couple curls with them dumbbells or something like that, right? we have moved and exercised.
Yeah.
And we can sit back down.
We may start doing some longer Gundam streams after the start of the new year.
Yeah.
I really want that extra time for goatees.
Fair enough.
But after the start of the new year, we may do some longer. We like once a month do a longer Gundam stream or something.
Okay.
So
Well, there's a few. There's quite a few Gundam games you can pick from to do that.
Yeah.
Now your limit, as I understand it, of actual good Gundam games is not that big.
yeah. Unfortunately.
So I don't know how you're going to handle that.
Yeah, the bad ones, if we do them on stream, they'll be like a short stream.
No.
How did that end up underneath me?
I don't know. You want to make it look like you were saying it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's too late now. That's like the worst dub ever.
Yeah, it's a pretty bad one. But
Gosh.
we'll be back tomorrow with Gundam Breaker 3.
Excellent.
Not Will, with the game. I mean, Will's probably going to be there, but with the game, Gundam Breaker 3. Monday, we'll be back with Lotro.
Yeah.
Tuesday, we'll be back with a regular podcast. Wednesday, you'll be back with Relicta. Maybe for the last time. Maybe.
Maybe. I'm such a failure.
You're doing great. I'm proud of you, buddy. You're making progress. And some of those puzzles I'm looking at going, it's when I might have noped out.
All right.
Next Thursday, we'll be talking year wrap up. This is our first year doing the TTRPG podcast.
Yes. Yeah. What?
We're making good time on turn A, actually. He's burning through it. But
I'm trying to hold straight face. Don't be over there giggling. I'm trying to look intimidate.
can't help it. I'm going to get
Dang.
Until next time, I've been Trey.
I've been wronging.
This has been the Full Spectrum TTRPG podcast. Remember to always do the full spectrum that SCPs have to offer.
Good night, all.